they say that you have to catch the audience within the first 8 seconds or 10 seconds. And then if you don't catch them then you're screwed. They also say that if you say any censored words or if you swear, then in the first minute, then your video is not going to be recommended. So I'm just going to wait for like a minute or two before I start swearing and speaking my mind. But it is August 15th and it's time for the mid-season review. So a couple of months ago, I started, the experiment on what does the algorithm want versus what does my research say the audience wants. And then is there a convergence? Is there a point where it meets and you can give the audience what they want, which is authenticity and realism, while giving the algorithm what it wants, which is, well, we'll get to that because I I think I'm onto something. So a couple of months ago, we started this thing where told you all about my research and what came out of it. And then I said, I'm going to start crafting my characters to find that bridge between what people want and what the algorithm wants, what the Illuminati wants, okay? And then shuttle in my message in there so that we are responsible with our content in terms of giving helpful narratives to different people. So we're gonna have one of those nerdy sessions again because this is a mid-season review and we're just gonna go over the whole experience, what I learned, what came away with, and then we're gonna go into the next stage later on during sweeps, okay? So essentially, Scribble Bites, go back a few videos, but just a quick summary. Scribble Bites is created to document the creative process in making a show, in developing a story, in designing characters. Now, a lot of the time, people think that people, actors or whatever, just make it up as the show's happening. The shows are scripted, season arcs are developed, and all of these things have an end goal in mind. They have an agenda of what they are trying to sell you. It's not a conspiracy, it's a fact. And oftentimes we find that the agenda is different to what people want to hear. And that's because most of the people in media right now have been doing it for hundreds of years or 100 years. So they don't really need to care what people want. And we can see this with the de-evolution of legacy media, where basically they're not consulting people, caring what people, they're just like, this is what you're going to watch because we said so, and we have the budget to do it. So this is what you're going to get. On Scribble Bites, I'm saying this is what people actually want. This is what is helpful for them. This is what's not helpful for them. So let's fulfill our corporate responsibility while also not leading people to hell. And I'm not using hell as an actual religious place, but I mean the hell of consumerism and feeling, worthless and like you are a victim or that you are to blame for other people's victimizations. And that's where I want to start. I want to start with my favorite reference, Man in Context. and they have this beautiful thing on realistic self-ideal versus unrealistic self-ideal. So this is about identity. And that's what I deal with on Scribble Bites, issues surrounding identity. Because oftentimes when you watch media, you do it as an escape, but it's your escape. So you want to see characters that are like you escaping, doing different things. If you keep seeing certain kinds of characters and you don't see yourself reflected in a narrative, then it just becomes another reminder of why life and the world sucks. And as storytellers and entertainers, it's our job and our duty to make sure that you get your escape for, 2 hours or 3, 4 hours a day. And then the rest of the time you can worry about real life stuff. And so, looking at identity through that lens, I just want to go through a few cool quotes that I found doing my research for the past 10 videos before this, or so. 10 or so. And we'll get to those. So buckle up, buckle in. So when we're looking at the idea of self-ideal, there's this great quote by Fritz Perls, and it says, "The crazy person says, I am Abraham Lincoln. The neurotic person says, I wish I were Abraham Lincoln. And the healthy person says, I am I, and you are you." And that pretty much sums up the whole ethos of Scribble Bites. Because it's in the name. It's Scribble Bites. I'm scribbling using megabytes, using video. And I'm scribbling the creative process. Throwing stuff on the wall, seeing what sticks, what doesn't, modifying. Because that reveals, and it takes the mystery out of the creative process. Because a lot of people, I've noticed, put so much pressure on themselves to make content and get it right and try and figure out the formula, kind of like they're trying to figure out some gambling formula at the slot machines. And that leads to inauthenticity. And what you ideally would want is authenticity. But again, that doesn't mean putting on an act or being someone you're not. Which is kind of ironic because I'm an actor and I do play different characters. But again, the point of acting is not to lie or to pretend. It's to behave in a realistic manner under imagined circumstances. Acting is real. Acting is a craft. And so it's very important to understand the audience and then understand how to transport them to that different world while fighting the algorithm. Let's not say fighting, let's say while straddling the algorithm and the people who program it and the agenda that they have. And some very interesting things came up because of that. But looking at self-identity, there's a nice chapter here called Self-Identity versus Self-Alienation. And they say, as far as self-identity is concerned, we can distinguish between personal self-identity and social or public self-identity. Allport has explained personal self-identity as follows. So this is personal self-identity. Today, I remember some of my thoughts and feelings of yesterday. Tomorrow, I will also remember some of my thoughts and feelings of today and yesterday. And I am sure that these thoughts and feelings derive from one and the same person. They are my thoughts and my feelings. So when you look at self-identity, there's a continuity there, because you know who you are based on your thoughts, and your thoughts are connected day to day. And so that builds a picture of who you are. And so that also includes your physical and psychological and social characteristics. So that goes into things like your subculture. For example, people who are goths or people who are techies. That's not going to change in a day. That's something that you are, that is part of your personal identity. And so what happens sometimes is that we have something called self-alienation. And that can be described as a feeling when you have a discontinuity and diffusion in respect of your personal identity. So that's when your thoughts don't link up together, where one day you're being told one thing and you absorb that in. For example, you need to have a six-pack to get a girlfriend. Then the next day they tell you, no, it's all about your heart and your spirit. Don't worry about looks. Then the next day they tell you, no, you need to be rich. And then you'll get the woman of your dreams or whatever it is. And people can say that, that's fine, because I am me and you are you. However, because of the algorithm, which we discussed in the very first video in this series 2-3 months ago, people are being hypnotized and taking these things on, and it's creating what happens when there is a discontinuity in your thoughts or self-alienation. What happens with self-alienation is that you go through an identity crisis, and then you don't know who you are, you don't know what you should be called, and all of that. Because identity crises center around the question, who am I? What am I doing? I was watching a podcast by these two gentlemen, and it was like I was in a different world, because for about an hour and a half, they were just saying in different ways, who am I? What am I doing? What if the world is a hologram and none of this is happening? And, that's a huge, 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 huge red flag, as people would say, because why are you thinking about the world being a hologram? The world is the world. Go help poor people, go feed orphans and help widows. Don't think about holograms and aliens. Come on, people, get it together. Okay. So now a lot of this then spills into the idea of playing a role. And this is where we intersect back into my experiment that I was doing with the particular character that I was working on, which we'll get to. So just to touch on roles, they have this beautiful graphic in here. So A, B, and C. So they're trying to explain that one person can play multiple roles and it's okay. It doesn't mean that your identity is linked into that role, because your role doesn't determine your identity. Your identity determines your position within each role and how you play them. And that's how we've built society to today. And so on the top, they have a woman and she is subservient at work. She's taking notes for her boss. Then in the middle, they have a woman who's on an equal partnership with her husband at home. And then picture C, they have a woman being in a position of power over her children. So it's one person playing a submissive role at work, an equal partnership role with her spouse, and a position of power with her children. Now, of course, we don't need to take these things literally, and we're not even going to get into that. But essentially what they're showing is you are allowed to play different roles and it's still okay. So Firstly, a role involves a rule-following pattern of actions. Secondly, roles are of a social nature in the sense that they affect at least one other person. And thirdly, roles are fulfilled in specific situations. And so with Scribble Bytes and the content that I'm focusing on, it's about maintaining self-identity while still fulfilling the roles you have in a community, because you don't live on this planet by yourself. You weren't beamed in here from outer space. Everyone who is here was born here. So everyone who's here is equal, regardless of any other perceived hierarchy or elite status. Unless you came from outer space, you have no right to tell anyone else what to do. And so with my characters, I always preserve a sense of self-identity. I like strong characters. I like characters who win. And one of my favorite acting teachers, Ivana Chubbuck, teaches that your characters need to win. And it's a very nice departure from this whole sad boy, woe is me kind of characterizations that the algorithm seems to favor. Because if you come on here and you cry and you say, leave Britney alone, and you act like a fool, then the algorithm pushes you, furthering self alienation, which makes you have an identity crisis. And then when you are in that fugue state where you don't know who you are, then the powers that be can tell you who you are and get you to spend your money on crap. Now, that is not a very sustainable business model. I'm coming at it from the point of you're not going to be able to sustain the creative industry if you're making people lose their minds. No one's going to make money. How we will make money is if we engender a strong sense of people's self-identities through the stories we tell so that they can work, make money, and buy our tickets to see our shows or subscribe or whatever. Okay? So everybody just calm down and read a friggin' psychology book. To that point, the reason that I started this experiment was to explore, like I said, how that would happen. So just a bit of background into that. The National Film and Video Foundation did a study in the entertainment and media field. And this is just a quote from their skills audit booklet. So they said there is a need for extensive market research to identify content that would appeal to the existing audience and to develop new target markets. More focus on marketing and creating audience awareness could encourage investment, and funds should be directed towards the distribution phase. The lack of available work in the film industry, especially permanent positions, is of grave concern to industry experts. There are more graduates than there are jobs available. One way of rectifying this is to enable the making of more films by creating the audience. There is a huge potential audience. More money should be spent on market research and marketing films through social media channels. So this is where we are headed, going into creating audiences. So going into my narrative, which is the one we're focusing on now, it's called Simple. It's a comedy series. It's dry comedy. And it's very Lisa Kudrow, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. We'll get into that later. But the reason why I wanted to start with a comedy, a dry comedy at that, is because in comedy, you can explore certain themes that you might not be able to explore in dramatic work, especially, in this context, on this platform. And so, just talking about the kind of revenue in movies, this kind of research is so necessary because just in my country, the box office revenues for locally produced films for the first half of 2018 amounted to 17 million rand. Just get that straight. The box office revenue for locally produced films was less than $1 million for the first half of 2018, and that went down from 30 million rand in 2017 in the same period. So it literally went down by half, and this was before 2020. That's insane. And they say this is now from the South African Box Office Report, which was published in 2018 by the National Film and Video Foundation. They say that there were many contributing factors such as unemployment and increased value-added tax. And so people were not spending as much money on movies in general, but the people who suffered were the local industry. And that's why my show, Simple, is a web series. Because nobody's going to the cinema anymore. If you have dreams of cinema, good luck. And then we also talked about the audience member. So who is this audience that I'm creating, that I'm targeting, that I'm speaking to? Some of the videos before this, I did mention it was Mavericks. And I mentioned the whole story of how it came about, blah, blah, blah. Go look it up. But essentially, research was done by, there was a study done by Dr. Ellie Roma Gardner and Chris J. Jackson, and they identified a group of people called Mavericks. And now this is my audience, Mavericks. In particular, mine is called Netizen Mavericks. So it's Mavericks Online. And to quote from the study, they said, this combination of innovation, risk-taking, and perseverance to achieve a goal is really dynamic and is really the essence of what being a maverick is about. So my audience members have a combination of innovation, risk-taking, and perseverance to achieve a goal. Everything that I do is aimed at those people. If you are not one of those people, you will not identify. See, it's all linking together. You will not self-identify with any of the things that we do at Scribble Bytes, because everything we do at Scribble Bytes is meant to reinforce the self-identities of people who are innovative, who are risk takers, and who persevere. And that's why it's called Scribble Bytes, because I'm showing you the behind the scenes of how a show is made. So when you finally see the sparkly show at the end, you don't just go, oh, where did that come from? No, you'll see, oh, it comes from sitting down, doing this, designing characters, drafting and releasing seasons with no structure. That's the swirl that reinforces stuff to my audience, okay? So if that's you, I know you're still watching. And so Mavericks have a really strong drive to follow their goals. Sometimes, however, it may seem quite dysfunctional, quite maladaptive. For instance, most of us have been taught that we shouldn't break rules. And this is what the researcher, the doctor, says, I was probably most surprised about the finding of low agreeableness as being a significant factor. So low agreeableness, they don't just go along with the flow, they don't follow the trends. These are my people that I've created, found, whatever you want to call it. Now, let's look at the actual character work that I focused on. So, as I mentioned, there are 3 different worlds within the Scribble Bytes universe. And the first world is the night game world. Now, the night game world has to do with escapism. So these people, these audience members, they can be broken down into three different stages of their life journey. And the first stage is escapism. In Scribble Bytes, we explore escapism through sex. And so, why did we choose sex? Because, according to my research and to published reports like this one by Adele Robinson from Sky News in 2020, she says the number of students turning to sex work is rising as a result of the pandemic. Hospitality and retail sectors have been hit particularly hard by job losses, both areas where students tend to find part-time work. As a result, many have been affected by a loss of income due to the worsening economy. Now, the economy has been worsening for over a decade. It's not just since 2020 that students have been turning to sex work, because in my research initially in 2017, there was already a rise of students turning to sugar daddy websites and adult themed work in order to pay for their studies. That started becoming more and more common and socially acceptable as far back as 2017. And so with the 2020 events, that obviously put the whole thing into hyperdrive. And now it's just a common thing. You go out, you meet your friends. Hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a lawyer. What do you do? I'm a doctor. What do you do? I'm an adult entertainer online. It's that common. And so again, we have no problem with that at Scribble Bytes. If that's your role that you play in society, fine. As long as you have your well-defined and strong self-identity, no problem with that. And so that's the character that I wanted to start with. The character who comes from the night game world, which is Mike. The character is called Mike Hunt. Mr. Hunt. And he acts in a show called Simp Pill. Because you have red pill, black pill, blue pill. Now you have simple. See, it's dry humor. It's dry. And so Simple, like I said, it's a web series. Why? Because according to Flume, 66% of South African population is aged 35 years or younger. 76% of them trust content that is shared by real people. And they watch the most online videos. And 90% of people aged 18 to 29 are on social media in this country. And so that explains why it's a web series. It's actually set online. It's called Simple because this particular part of the population is into the whole blue pill, red pill dating community manosphere thing. Not that they're into it, but they're aware of it. It's a popular topic for them. We use the purple color, magenta, so whenever you see that aesthetic, you know we're doing Simple. And yeah. Okay, so let's get into the story dynamics. So, I've already explained, we have Night Game. Out of Night Game, we have Simple. Simple is a show. It's a 30-minute comedy series. When I was writing the script's written, it's out. So when I was writing the script, I developed characters for the script. One of the characters that I play is Mike Hunt. So Mike is a guy, a dude online who talks about sex and incels and whatever. But before we got there, when I finish writing a script, I order a script report. And that tells me if the overall story is positive, if it's whatever. Let's go through it. So the main character in Simple stays the same. He doesn't have a change arc. This is a comedy. The characters are generally flat, meaning they're always the same every week. You know what to expect from them. And this is how this character wins, how he achieves success, by staying the same. The characters in the story are coming into finding a solution to the problem. And the problem lies in the area of role playing. Because being a boyfriend or being a girlfriend, that is a role that you play in society. And because it's a role, a lot of people abandon themselves and they listen to gurus who tell them how to play that role. And then we have the fiasco that we've seen with people like Tate and blah 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 blah. So that's what I'm making fun of in the show. The idea that any bozo with the access to an internet and a camera can start telling you stuff about relationships and what to do, and then millions of people listen to them. Meanwhile, it's bullshit. That's the joke of the show. And if you go and look in the simple playlist, you will see a whole bunch of ironic videos that are meant to be taken ironically. I mean, my Mavericks will understand it. And in the show, so at the end of the show, they show you how the audience will react. I mean, at the end of the script report, they show you how the audience will react. So mine, it said both men and women will tend to sympathize with the main character in the story. So you have characters or script reports where men will empathize and women will sympathize, or vice versa, or nobody will empathize, like in this story, because it is a comedy. You're not supposed to empathize with these bozos I'm talking, that I'm portraying or playing. Lovable, but still, marginal at best. What you do want, though, is to sympathize with them, because they are these sweet lost souls looking for answers outside of themselves, when you, the audience, know that the answer is within yourself. And so it's funny, it's amusing. Okay, so the reason why that just comes in, and that's interesting, is because women tend to find, in the script report, it says men and women will sympathize. And what happens is my character in the show is intuitive, which appeals more to women. And he doesn't use logic. And so that's where I started with doing the 10 videos also that precede this. So I'm an actor. In those videos, I'm acting. Some of the video titles were things like, I've slept with 70 men and women and I've still never found love. And stuff about how come incels only exist in America. And you're not vain, or what? You're not an incel, you're just vain. And things like, I think I just accidentally solved the marriage or divorce thingy. You're not an incel or femcel, you're just vain and picky. So those were the videos we we're talking about, right? Where I'm playing this character called Mike, and we're covering issues of self-identity, role-playing, self-alienation, and identity crisis. And so that's how I started, right? So then I had already written the script, but I want to just get a feel for it. So I sat in front of the camera and recorded these videos, also bearing in mind that I have to give the algorithm what it wants. And what I noticed is that the algorithm wants you to insult people. Now, I would never call someone an incel. Personally, I think that's a rather strange look. I'm not judging, but it's not something it's not language I would use. But I started first with the whole, um, talking about Mike himself, right, as the character, bearing his heart and saying, oh, he slept with so many people, but he still doesn't have, that spark or that experience of what love should be. And then I went into the incel thing, and I realized that whenever I mentioned incels, the views would spike and the videos would get more attention. In fact, the video that has the most out of all of those is the one that says, um, just scrolling here, okay? Give me a thing. We're live. Okay, so the video that had the most is the one that says, you're not an incel or femcel, you're just vain and picky, and this is why. Out of the entire series. And let's just have a look at the traffic source. Where did the people come from? So it came from half from the channel page, half from YouTube search. And oh, interesting. So the search term that brought it up, I'm looking at this, right now with you guys, because that's how we do Scribble Bites. Femcel. Femcel was the word that led people to that video. It wasn't incel. So there you go. Now that links up with my character because it's an intuitive character, which, according to narrative theory, we won't go into that. Women are intuitive problem solvers, men are logical problem solvers, and so it would make sense that my character appealed to females. Femcels, oh, okay. Or it could have been men who were looking for femcels. It could have been incel men looking for femcels. That's very, very, very interesting. And let's see where these people came from. No, you're not going to tell me? Okay, maybe here. Okay, just relax, guys. We're live. Okay, it's not telling me where they came from. So, oh, there we go. United States and United Kingdom. So, Americans and the UK. So now, obviously, this is the mid-season breakdown, part one. So now I know, okay, when we go into the next phase, I need to go more British. Maybe I should talk with a British accent, just like somebody else I know. Maybe Mike should be that guy. So I might have to do that. If you saw the other videos, you noticed I did change my voice for the character. It didn't really make a difference. It wasn't either way. With the one voice and the other voice, it didn't really make much of a difference. But now that I know that they come from Britain and the United States, I might put a bit of a twang in my voice just to, you know, to to draw a sense of relatability and authenticity with these people. And let's look at we're going to go to their gender as well. Let's look at their age. Oh, okay. Let's see their gender. Come on, guys. Seriously? There's not enough for both. Okay. And just the date and stuff. Okay, and most of the people who watched were not subscribed. Again, like I said in the previous video, subscribers don't really help anymore. This isn't 1998 when subscribers were a big deal. It's about getting the people when you get them. I mean, how many people are you subscribed to and how many times do you watch their stuff? So literally 97% of the people who watched were not subscribed. That is quite interesting. And so that was just one example that I'm looking at in this thing. Obviously, we could go more in depth with it, but interestingly enough, the one that did the best in this last quarter was the Star Marine video. So now I know I need to come back with Star Marine an update. And that's probably, and this is a video from 2019, but I suspect it did so well, especially with watch time in this quarter, because everything that's happening with the aliens now, the character in Star Marine predicted it back in 2019. So I'm supposing people are like, oh my gosh, how did he know 5 years ago? Well, it's called research. And so we'll table that for now. But another one that did quite well with watch time was the one where Mike, the character, says he slept with 70 women and men. Saucy, saucy. It seems like people like that one, but someone unsubscribed after they saw that. So this is, this is good. We want to thin the herd. So that's very good. I just want to have a bit of a look at the audience and stuff. Where did I click? Okay, we had some people returning. We had some new people coming in. And again, most of the people were unsubscribed, but not as much as before. How did I get to that page? Oh, that's how I got there. Just looking to see where they came from and how they got here. Now, this is the video where Mike talks about sleeping with 70 men and women. Again, I'm acting me myself. I've never done that. Okay, that's called acting. So people saw it mainly from the channel page itself. And really only like one person from search. Interesting. So sometimes it is. So then it would seem that my subscribers want to hear about sexy stuff. And then people who haven't subscribed want to hear my characters insulting men and women and incels and whatever, or calling people incels. But my subscribers want me to talk about How many people? Okay, this is quite interesting. So then, do you think that my subscribers are secretly in love with me? And can't imagine why. And the people who just see me on a one-off impression basis, that they are you know, want to see me insult people. That is quite fascinating. I'll have to do an A and B test. So in the next quarter, you can expect to see me doing ones where I'm insulting people. That'll be to get the non-subscribers. And then I know I'm joking, I'm not insulting people, calling people incels, asking them why can't they get dates. You need to be confident, all that kind of stuff. It's a parody, it's a joke. Making fun of those people who just, all you have to do is go and just be confident. And if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. So one of those for those people, and then just be confident, and then one where I'm talking about sex as the character, of course. Like maybe I'll try push it and be like I was fisting people or whatever, and then I'll do a more romantic one to see if it's more about love, sex, or if it's more about love, nurturing for my subscribers. Um, who apparently are in love with me. But if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, oh, what a wonderful Christmas we'd have. So we've got some quite interesting